excellent artists. The last two times we've been working on our chickadee, our black capped chickadee picture, and today we're going to finish up by doing the sky. So what you're going to need is your paper from last time, crayons, and if you have them, watercolor paints. All right, let's get started. Okay, so I have my chickadee picture here from the last art time, and I'm going to do something before I paint the sky. By the way, if you don't have paints at your house, you could try, if you have those available, a couple different things. Sometimes what I do is I'll take some water and maybe an old marker. This is not an old marker, so I won't actually do this. But if you've got an old marker that you would like to try this with, ask permission, of course, first. But you take off this and you just are going to let it soak in there for a while. What happens is the ink that's in the marker will go down into your water. You might want to stick it in a little jar. Something a little taller than this would probably work better so it doesn't fall out of there. Let it soak for a while, at least a couple hours, and see if you can make watercolor that way. I've also seen where people have used food dye. So if you have food dye at your home, you could try putting a couple drops of the food dye into the water and using that just like watercolor paints. Now, if you don't have any of those things available at home, what I want you to do is I want you to choose a color to color your sky in. And before we do any coloring today, I am going to use a white crayon to make some snowflakes. And what I'm going to do is just draw those. And you're saying to me right now, Miss Porter, I cannot see these snowflakes because my paper is white and the crayon is white. Well, if you have watercolor paints, I'm going to put them all over the place. This whole picture is in the sky. And if you're forgetting where you put them, what you can do is turn your paper around, maybe hold it up to some light to see where those are. Now, I like to make mine. I'll show you off here on the side of my paper. What I'm doing is I'm drawing an X with a line going through the middle. That's how I'm drawing my snowflakes, but if you would prefer to do dots or something else, you can do that. So I'm going to try to make lots of different snow, and if you, like I said, if you're losing track of where it is, hold it up to the light. All right, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a bunch of snowflakes in my picture. And let me hold it up and check it. I need some more. I know I need some right here. Here. I like to have lots of snow. And what I'm doing is I'm pressing really firmly with a crayon. If you try to use colored pencil with this, it's probably not going to work as well as it does with a crayon. So what we're going to do, if you have paints at home today, what I want you to try doing is, I think I've got enough there now. What I want you to do is try painting this. We're going to use a watercolor wash, which means you're not going to put a lot of color on here. You're going to create a light value. And remember, value is the lightness and darkness of a color. If you have a set of watercolors at your house that's dry like this, what you would do is you would take the color that you want to use, and I'm thinking of using a blue. So I'm going to get that color very, very wet in my tray. Let me move this off the side so you can see. This is if you're at home. Now, if you're at school with me, I may have already created the wash for you, but this is a good thing to know how to do. What I'm doing is I'm just gently wiggling my brush. I don't want to ruin my brush, so I'm just kind of wiggling it around. And I'm going to take my water now and stir some of this color into there. And the more that you stir, so this would work very much like the same if you're adding food dye. The idea behind a watercolor wash is not to have the color super dark, but rather a light value, so something that's very soft. Now, if you're doing something like food dye, you'd take your, this is liquid watercolor, but it's really almost the same thing as food dye. I would take a few drops of this, depending how strong you want it to be. And you would stir that around. And what I like to do is I like to test this out on a piece of paper before I start. And if that seems like it's dark enough, then you can start painting. If you want a little darker, add a couple more drops. Don't add too much all at once. The idea is to keep it nice and light. And I think that's good. The colors usually do dry a little bit lighter than they show up when they're wet. All right, so now that I have some snowflakes on my paper, I've got my paint ready. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to start in the corner. And you'll notice, if you've pressed firm enough with the crayon, that the white snowflakes are showing up. I'm not pushing hard with my... And the nice thing also is we colored this in with crayon, and you can paint right over your things. It won't even hurt your chickadee. It might leave a little spot, but honestly, if you take a tissue or something like that, it should wipe off. So the nice thing is you don't really have to paint around anything. You can paint right over it today. I'm going to try to avoid having puddles. So if I see a puddle starting to form, I usually just take that and I spread it to a new spot that's dry. I'm just going to paint over the whole picture. Remember not to push hard with your paintbrush. Be gentle. If you push hard, you'll notice that your paintbrush the hairs start to spread out, and sometimes they get so tangled, and so they've been pushed so down so much that they never really go back to a nice point. I'm going to do under the branch as well. I love watching the paint just pop right off of the crayon. That is so fascinating and so fun to watch. And it really is a time saver when it comes to painting, because I can just relax and paint without worrying about getting into the places I don't want. Now I'm just making sure I get all the corners and all the edges of my paper. And if I've got any places that have puddles, I try to soak those up with my brush or spread them around. Remember, if you're not using watercolor paper, which I did not here, you need to be extra careful not to paint over and over one spot too much. What can happen is it can tear your paper. So once it's painted, unless it's got puddles in that area, you don't need to paint there anymore. All right, so this is finished. All you have to do is let it dry, and then it's ready for you to display somewhere or give as a gift. Now, if you're one of the people that do not have any way of painting at home, let me show you what you can do. So instead of painting this, I'm going to use my crayons to color this in. And the neat thing about using crayons, if you don't have paint today, is you get to really select the colors that you want it to be. And what I think I'm going to do is I am going to do this kind of light blue, and I'm just going to start coloring. And when you color, the idea is to keep it nice and neat. You don't want to scribble. And a lot of people think scribbling just means, oh, you're going super fast. And it's easy to confuse that. But if you can go fast and keep it neat looking, then that's not scribbling. What happens when a lot of people go too fast is that it gets messy. Scribbling is really just messy coloring. And one thing I do to keep my coloring neat is I always try to color in the same direction. So you'll notice I've kind of started in this motion, and even though I'm down here in between the branches and the feet, I'm still coloring in that slightly diagonal motion for me. What you want to do is choose if it's easier for you to color up and down, or if it's easier to color straight side to side. That's fine, but the trick is to make sure you keep the even pressure, which means you're not pushing hard all of a sudden and then soft. You're not changing directions. You're just going to color in the whole thing with a nice light value of blue. Or hey, even if you want to choose a different color, maybe you'd like to try to make like a sunset or a sunrise with your crayons. So I'm going to get this whole thing colored, and I'll show you how you should do your snowflakes. They're going to be a little bit different than if we had paint. But remember, different doesn't mean it's bad, it just means it's not the same. And the world has room. We have enough room in the world to have all kinds of different art. That's the beautiful thing about making art, is that we can have different looks and different answers. That's the best part about art. So now that I have this whole thing colored a nice light blue, I'm going to take a darker, you could even use the same one and just push harder if you wanted to, and I'm going to make my snowflakes like this. Now if you prefer just to leave the snowflakes out, it's fine with me. That's a decision that you get to choose. If you have another way of making snowflakes that you like better, feel free to try that. Oops, I missed a spot right here. Maybe you would like to have two different tones, like a dark blue. Depends how many snowflakes you want. All right, so this completes our chickadee picture. Whichever way you decide to finish your sky at home is fine with Miss Porter. But remember, please take a picture of it, load it to Seesaw, so I can make sure you've checked off your work for the week. And now that this is finished, try uploading a picture to Artsonia. If you need help with that, please let me know. I can send you an email, or I can leave some information for you in the comments. I look forward to seeing your artwork, and I hope you've had fun creating with me today. Have a great day. See you next time, artists. Bye.